Welcome back. Most people pray as if God needs to be convinced, persuaded, or informed about their problems. They beg, plead, and repeat their requests, hoping that somehow their words will finally reach divine ears. But Joel Goldsmith discovered something that changes everything about prayer. Jesus revealed a mystical secret that most believers completely miss when he said that before they ask. The answer already exists. This is not about positive thinking or manifesting techniques. This is about understanding the true nature of divine consciousness and how prayer actually works in the spiritual dimension. When you grasp this principle, your entire relationship with God transforms from begging to recognition, from asking to realizing what already is. The secret lies in understanding that God's nature is completeness, wholeness, and infinite supply existing right now in this present moment. Nothing you ask for needs to be created or sent to you because it already exists in consciousness. Your role is not to convince God to give you something, but to recognize what is already present in divine reality. Joel Goldsmith taught that the kingdom of heaven is not a future destination, but a present reality of consciousness. When Jesus said the kingdom is within you, he meant that all divine qualities, healing, abundance, and peace already exist in your true spiritual identity right now. The problem is not that these things are absent, but that you have not recognized their presence. Traditional prayer operates from a sense of separation and lack. You pray as if you are separate from God, asking an external deity to send you something you do not have. But mystical Christianity reveals that you and the Father are one. The divine consciousness that created everything is the consciousness that you are. There is no separation except in human belief. When you pray from this understanding, you are not asking God to do something. You are recognizing what God has already established in spiritual reality. Before you even recognized your need, the divine answer existed in consciousness. Your prayer becomes a moment of spiritual awareness rather than a petition for intervention. Think about how the sun shines before anyone asks for light. It radiates constantly whether you request it or not because shining is its nature. God's nature is infinite good, perpetual giving, and constant presence. Divine love does not wait for your prayer to begin flowing. It has been flowing eternally, and your prayer simply opens your awareness to receive what has always been available. Joel Goldsmith called this recognition prayer versus petition prayer. Petition prayer says, "Please give me what I lack." Recognition prayer says, "I recognize what you have already given." One operates from emptiness and separation. The other operates from fullness and unity. The difference in results is absolutely transformative. This is why some prayers seem unanswered while others bring immediate transformation. When you pray from lack, you reinforce the belief in separation and absence. When you pray from recognition, you align with the truth of spiritual reality where wholeness already exists. You stop trying to change God's mind and start changing your own perception. The practical application begins with a shift in how you approach every prayer moment. Instead of telling God about your problem and asking for a solution, you pause and recognize that infinite intelligence already knows and has already provided. Before your words form, the divine answer exists in consciousness, waiting for your recognition and acceptance. Linda struggled with chronic anxiety for years, praying desperately for peace every single day. She would beg God to take away her fears and give her calm. Nothing changed until she learned this principle from Joel Goldsmith's teachings. She stopped asking God to create peace for her and began recognizing that divine peace already existed as her true spiritual nature. Within 3 weeks of practicing recognition prayer, Linda experienced a shift she had never known in 15 years of petition prayer. The anxiety did not disappear instantly, but she began accessing moments of profound peace that felt like remembering something she had always known. She was not creating peace through her prayer, but uncovering the peace that had always been present beneath her fearful thoughts. Joel Goldsmith discovered this principle not through theological study alone, but through direct spiritual experience. He found that when he stopped trying to demonstrate things through prayer and instead rested in the understanding that God's completeness already included everything, miracles became natural occurrences rather than desperate attempts to manipulate divine will into action. This teaching goes back to the earliest Christian mystics who understood that Christ consciousness is not something you achieve, but something you recognize as your eternal spiritual identity. The Apostle Paul wrote that you are complete in him, not will be complete someday already, complete right now. Your spiritual perfection is not something you earn or create through good behavior or correct prayers. The reason this seems difficult to accept is that physical senses report lack limitation, sickness and problems. Your eyes see dysfunction. Your body feels pain. Your bank account shows insufficiency. But Joel Goldsmith taught that spiritual reality exists prior to and independent of physical appearances. What is true in consciousness is more real than what appears in form. Christopher was a businessman, facing potential bankruptcy after his partner embezzled funds. He prayed constantly for God to send money, open doors, and rescue his failing company. Every prayer reinforced his sense of desperation and lack. When you truly understand this principle, prayer becomes restful instead of desperate. You are not trying to convince or persuade. You are not hoping God will finally hear you. You are simply opening your awareness to recognize the divine reality that has always been present but which you had not previously perceived through the cloud of fear and lack-based thinking. If these transformation stories inspire you, like this video to help others find these teachings. Subscribe for more. Joel Goldsmith, Wisdom, and comment. What healing journey resonated most with you? The practice of recognition prayer requires developing spiritual perception beyond physical senses. Joel Goldsmith taught a technique he called listening prayer, or the practice of receptivity. Instead of speaking your needs to God, you become silent and listen for the still small voice of truth that speaks in consciousness. When the human mind becomes quiet and receptive, this listening is not waiting to hear audible words but opening your awareness to receive spiritual impressions, intuitive guidance, and the felt sense of divine presence. In this silence, you begin to perceive that consciousness is not empty but full of divine intelligence, already knowing and already acting even before your human awareness recognizes it. Start with just 5 minutes of silent receptivity after stating your recognition that infinite intelligence already knows and has already answered. Do not try to make something happen. Simply rest and trust that divine wisdom is already present in your consciousness. Over time, this practice develops your ability to perceive spiritual reality beyond physical appearances and limitations. Another complementary practice is what Joel Goldsmith called impersonalization. When you face a problem or challenge, the human tendency is to personalize it as your problem that you must solve. But impersonalization means recognizing that what appears as your problem is actually a universal, false belief in separation from God that has no power in spiritual reality. For example, if you face financial lack, impersonalization means recognizing that lack is not a personal condition, but a false belief in separation from infinite supply. If you experience illness, impersonalization means seeing that disease is not your personal burden, but a false belief in separation from divine wholeness. This shifts your prayer from asking God to fix your problem to recognizing that the problem has no reality in spiritual consciousness. Robert practiced this when diagnosed with a serious heart condition. Instead of claiming the disease as his personal burden, he practiced impersonalizing it as a false belief in separation from divine wholeness. He recognized that in spiritual reality, his true identity was complete and perfect because God's creation is complete and perfect. Over 8 months of treatment and prayer practice, his condition improved beyond medical expectations. Joel Goldsmith also taught the importance of understanding prayer as consciousness rather than words. Many people think prayer is about saying the right words, using correct formulas, or repeating specific phrases enough times, but spiritual prayer is the activity of consciousness, recognizing truth regardless of the words used or not used at all. You can pray effectively without speaking a single word by simply resting in the awareness of God's presence and completeness. You can pray while washing dishes, walking in nature, or sitting in traffic by maintaining the consciousness that divine intelligence governs every moment and has already established harmony and spiritual reality even when circumstances appear chaotic. This understanding frees you from the burden of trying to pray enough or correctly enough. Your consciousness of truth is the prayer, not your eloquent words or lengthy petitions. When you maintain awareness that before they ask, the answer already exists, you are praying constantly even in moments when you speak no words at all. The practice of gratitude complements recognition prayer powerfully because gratitude acknowledges what already is rather than focusing on what is not. When you give thanks before you see the answer in physical form, you are practicing the same principle Jesus demonstrated when he thanked God before the manifestation appeared. Joel Goldsmith taught that gratitude is not about being thankful that God will do something in the future, but being grateful for what God has already established in spiritual reality. Now you thank God not for what you hope to receive, but for what already exists in consciousness, waiting for your recognition and acceptance into experience. Nicole struggled with chronic pain for 3 years. She began practicing gratitude not for healing she hoped would come, but for the wholeness that already existed in her spiritual identity. She thanked divine consciousness for the completeness that was true about her even when physical sensation reported otherwise. Over 5 months, her pain levels decreased significantly. She understood that her gratitude had not created wholeness, but it opened her awareness to recognize it. The most common challenge people face with recognition prayer is that physical circumstances seem to contradict spiritual truth. Your bank account shows debt while you try to recognize infinite supply. Your body feels pain while you try to recognize divine wholeness. The gap between spiritual reality and physical appearance can feel impossible to bridge. Joel Goldsmith addressed this directly. He taught that spiritual reality and physical appearance operate in different dimensions. What is true in consciousness is causative. What appears in form is effect. When you try to change the effect directly through petition prayer, you are working at the wrong level. When you recognize the truth in consciousness, the effect gradually aligns with the cause. This does not mean denying what you experience physically. It means understanding that physical conditions are not the final truth about you. Your spiritual identity as God's expression is the deeper truth, and as you maintain consciousness of this truth, the physical experience gradually transforms to reflect it. This process usually unfolds over time rather than instantly. Another challenge is the ingrained habit of petition prayer. After years or decades of asking God for things, the switch to recognition prayer feels unnatural and even wrong. You may feel like you are not really praying if you are not asking for something specific or listing your needs before God. Daniel experienced this exact struggle. He had prayed petition prayers his entire life and felt guilty when he tried recognition prayer because it seemed like he was not being humble or acknowledging his neediness before God. His breakthrough came when he realized that recognition prayer is actually more honoring to God because it acknowledges divine completeness rather than suggesting God has somehow failed to provide. Recognition prayer says God has already given everything and you are simply opening your awareness to receive it. Petition prayer inadvertently suggests God is withholding and needs to be convinced to give. When Daniel saw it this way, he understood that recognition prayer was actually deeper trust and greater faith than petition prayer ever was. His guilt dissolved and his practice deepened significantly. Some people struggle because they do not experience immediate results. They try recognition prayer for a week or two, see no change in circumstances, and conclude the teaching does not work. They return to petition prayer or give up on prayer altogether. This happens because they misunderstand the nature of spiritual practice and transformation. Joel Goldsmith emphasized that recognition prayer is not a technique to manipulate outcomes, but a practice of spiritual awareness that gradually transforms consciousness. As consciousness changes, experience changes. But consciousness does not usually shift overnight after years of contrary thinking. The practice requires patience, persistence, and trust that spiritual truth is working even when physical appearances have not yet caught up. Elizabeth practiced recognition prayer for her troubled marriage for 3 months before she noticed any change. She was tempted to quit many times, but she persisted in recognizing that divine love already connected her and her husband in spiritual reality. Small shifts began appearing in month 4. By month 8, their relationship had transformed in ways she could not have predicted or manufactured through willpower alone. The final common challenge is feeling like you are lying to yourself when circumstances are objectively difficult. If you are recognizing abundance while facing eviction or recognizing wholeness while dealing with serious illness, your rational mind protests that you are denying reality and engaging in dangerous delusion. Joel Goldsmith's response was that you are not denying your human experience but recognizing a deeper spiritual reality that exists simultaneously. You acknowledge what your senses report while also knowing that spiritual truth is more fundamental and more real. You are not pretending the problem does not exist. You are recognizing that the problem exists in the dimension of effect while spiritual wholeness exists in the dimension of cause. This is a subtle but crucial distinction. You can seek medical treatment while recognizing divine wholeness. You can take practical action about finances while recognizing infinite supply. You are not choosing between human responsibility and spiritual truth. You are bringing spiritual awareness into human experience, trusting that consciousness of truth will work through whatever practical channels are appropriate. The spiritual and practical work together, not against each other. If these challenge-breaking techniques speak to your heart, like to support this content, subscribe for advanced spiritual practices and comment. Which obstacle are you ready to transform? Now, as you develop proficiency with recognition prayer, you begin to live from a completely different foundation. Instead of moving through life waiting for problems to arise so you can ask God to fix them, you maintain constant awareness that divine intelligence already governs every moment and situation. This becomes your default consciousness rather than something you remember only during crisis. Joel Goldsmith called this practicing the presence of God. It means maintaining awareness throughout your day that infinite wisdom is present right now. That divine love is operating right now. That spiritual completeness exists right now regardless of appearances. This is not constant verbal prayer but constant consciousness of truth underlying every activity. Joshua integrated this into his demanding career as an emergency room physician. He began each shift with a moment of recognizing that divine intelligence already knew every patient who would arrive and had already established the right action for each situation. During intense moments, he would silently recognize this truth. Again, he found that solutions and calm came more easily when he operated from this consciousness. Advanced practice includes recognizing this truth for others, not just yourself. When someone shares a problem with you, instead of immediately joining them and seeing the problem as real and overwhelming, you silently recognize that divine consciousness already knows and has already answered for this person, even if they do not yet perceive it. This is not about telling them their problem is not real or dismissing their suffering. You offer appropriate compassion and practical help, but internally you maintain consciousness of their spiritual wholeness and perfection. This consciousness can have tangible effects because consciousness is not limited by physical proximity or individual minds. We all participate in one infinite consciousness. Stephanie practiced this with her elderly father, who was declining rapidly with dementia while providing loving care and practical support. She maintained inner recognition that his true spiritual identity remained perfect and complete in divine consciousness. She could not know how this would manifest physically, but she trusted the truth regardless of appearances. Her father experienced periods of unexpected clarity that doctors could not explain. Stephanie understood she had not created this, but had recognized what was always true. The integration also includes recognizing this principle in challenging relationships and difficult people. When someone treats you poorly or creates conflict, the human reaction is to pray for God to change them or remove them from your life. But advanced recognition prayer sees that the divine nature already exists in them just as much as in you, hidden beneath false beliefs and fear. You recognize that the person's true spiritual identity is love, wisdom, and wholeness. Even when their behavior contradicts this completely, you do not have to tolerate abuse or stay in harmful situations. You can establish appropriate boundaries, but your consciousness remains anchored in spiritual truth about them rather than locked into reaction to their behavior. Kevin used this approach with an extremely difficult colleague who seemed determined to undermine him professionally. Instead of fighting back or asking God to get rid of this person, Kevin practiced recognizing that divine wisdom already governed both of them and that harmony already existed in spiritual reality. Over several months, the colleague's behavior shifted noticeably. Eventually, the colleague apologized and explained he had been dealing with personal crisis. The relationship transformed completely. The ultimate integration is living from the understanding that nothing needs to be demonstrated because everything already is. This sounds paradoxical because you still have experiences, make choices, and see changes in your life. But the consciousness shift is profound. You stop living in constant effort to make things happen and start living in trust that divine intelligence is already operating. Joel Goldsmith taught that this is true spiritual rest, not physical inactivity but inner rest. From the burden of believing you must create, manipulate, or force outcomes through your personal will. You take appropriate action in the world, but the action flows from inner guidance rather than anxious striving. You trust the process because you know that before you ask, the answer already exists. This does not mean passivity or fatalism. It means aligned action from spiritual consciousness rather than desperate action from fear and lack. Ashley experienced this in her creative work. She stopped striving desperately for success and started creating from recognition that divine creativity already flowed through her. Her work improved dramatically. Opportunities appeared naturally. She produced more with less effort because she was working with spiritual truth rather than against it. When you truly understand that before they ask, the answer already exists, your entire relationship with prayer, God, and life itself transforms fundamentally. You are no longer a beggar approaching a reluctant deity hoping for scraps. Your consciousness itself recognizing its own divine nature and completeness. This is the mystical Christianity that Jesus taught, but which institutional religion often obscured. The transformation goes deeper than improved circumstances. Though circumstances often do improve, the real transformation is internal. You develop unshakable peace that comes from knowing that divine intelligence governs your life, regardless of appearances. You access joy that does not depend on external conditions. You experience freedom from the constant anxiety of trying to make life work through human effort alone. Joel Goldsmith lived this consciousness and taught thousands of students worldwide to do the same. His message was simple but revolutionary. Stop asking God to do something and start recognizing what God has already done. Stop praying from lack and start praying from fullness. Stop trying to demonstrate things and start resting in what already is. This is the secret of answered prayer. The practical result is that you begin to experience what many call miracles, but which are actually natural outcomes of living in alignment with spiritual truth. Solutions appear that you could not have engineered. Healing happens through unexpected channels. Resources arrive just when needed. Relationships transform. Opportunities emerge from nowhere. Divine timing orchestrates circumstances with precision that human planning could never achieve. But you understand these are not miracles in the sense of God breaking natural laws for your benefit. They are the natural manifestation of spiritual law operating when your consciousness aligns with truth. Cause and effect are always operating. When the cause is consciousness of divine completeness, the effect is experience that reflects completeness. Before you even ask, the divine answer already exists in consciousness waiting to manifest in form. This understanding removes the mystery and uncertainty from spiritual life. You are not hoping God will maybe answer your prayers if you are good enough or faithful enough. You are recognizing that spiritual reality is already complete and your consciousness is opening to receive what has always been available. The outcome is certain because it is based on spiritual law rather than divine whim. The teaching also addresses one of the deepest human fears, which is the fear that you are alone, abandoned or unsupported by the universe. When you understand that before you ask, the answer already exists, you know with absolute certainty that you are never alone. Divine intelligence is always present, always aware, always providing exactly what consciousness requires for its unfoldment. This does not mean you get everything your human ego wants. It means you receive what divine wisdom knows is right for your spiritual development and life purpose. Sometimes this includes challenges that strengthen you. Sometimes it includes delays that prepare you. Sometimes it includes unexpected directions that serve purposes you cannot yet see. But you trust the process because you know infinite intelligence is operating. Joel Goldsmith's students reported again and again that this trust was the greatest gift of the teaching. Not the demonstrations or improved circumstances, though these were wonderful, but the deep inner knowing that they were held, guided, and provided for by infinite love that knew them completely and had answered before. They even recognized they had questions. This knowing changed everything about how they moved through life. So what happens when you truly understand that before they ask, Divine consciousness has already answered? You stop living as a beggar and start living as consciousness itself expressing divine nature. You stop praying from desperation and start praying from recognition. You stop trying to change God's mind and start changing your own awareness to perceive what God has already established. The journey begins today with a simple shift in how you approach prayer. The next time you face a challenge or need, pause before asking God for something. Instead, take a moment to recognize that infinite intelligence already knows, already cares, and has already established the perfect answer in spiritual consciousness. Your role is not to convince or inform God, but to open your awareness to receive what already exists. This is Joel Goldsmith's gift to the world. The mystical Christianity that Jesus taught, but which got buried under centuries of religious doctrine, focused on human unworthiness and divine distance. You are not separate from God. You are the expression of divine consciousness, and in that consciousness, everything you could ever need already exists, waiting for your recognition. Before you ask, it is already given. If your spiritual understanding expanded through these Joel Goldsmith secrets like this video, subscribe for more transformative teachings, and comment, "I am transformed," to confirm your new path. Thanks for watching.